Wondered if they maintained their speed at this speed, would they be able to get there in an instant, and when they arrived on the second floor, they then captured and forced Clebius, who was the boss of the second floor, and tried to escape from there to join them. When they reached the third floor, they were again blocked by someone. Now it was Maid Kelly who was blocking them, but without her twin sister, Sheenie, she was no match for Taylor's group. She could only apologize to Alice because she could not complete the task she had assigned to her, of course. Taylor's group never thought about why the twin maid who was always together was blocking them alone. Things went smoother than expected, and they arrived at the fourth floor of the Ophilus Hall as planned. They thought like this, because the difficulty was too high on the first floor. They were then suddenly startled by a scream, and a group of students then rushed to run together away from the direction that Taylor's group wanted to go. Behind them, there was Will Rain, who was now dominated by protection magic. He couldn't bear this and could only scream for help. Placing the crystal ball that triggers the magic circle control system in the control room's dead center for everyone. TOC was Alice and Lortel's scheme. The protection magic attached to the entire Ophilus Hall building was originally designed to protect the students from outside intruders, but the current scene, it's just like a child holding a gun filled with live bullets. Taylor's group also looks overwhelmed in repelling the Will Rain's blind attack. The rainy weather added to the gloom of the now chaotic appearance of Ophilus Hall, and the building suddenly shook violently due to the events that were now happening on the fourth floor. The students trapped in Ophilus Hall could only feel panic and wonder what was happening outside. They were even worried that the building would collapse if it continued like this. They were also confused about where the maids were, and what they were doing, different from the group of students. The Ophilus Hall students who managed to maintain their calm, began to escape in various ways using the abilities they had, amidst the noise of breaking windows. The situation slowly turned into a catastrophe, and Taylor's group then racked their brains to resolve the chaotic situation. Taylor then asked Elvira if she had any night butterfly reagent left. Hearing that, Elvira then explained that the night butterfly reagent was only able to disrupt a mage's magic control, so it was ineffective against the magic circle that was attached like that, in a cramped place like this. There is a better reagent. Elvira then took out the reagent, the Devil's Snare reagent, a potion made by melting Devil's Snare seeds with Emperor Shellfish shells. After that, she then poured it forward. This reagent will block all the basic magic in this corridor. All of this is just additional magic. There is a lot, but she can handle this, so she asked them not to worry, then told the two of them to beat Will Rain together. Right after Elvira said that, the two of them then together came forward with Clebius, who felt like crying and asked why should he. Seeing the two people who came forward towards him, Will Rain still continued to attack blindly because he could not control the power. His attacks, which although many but could be avoided by the two of them because the attack was completely without direction at all, and Will Rain suddenly cried happily. He mumbled a little, finally, and a very powerful explosion suddenly occurred, which hit the entire upper floor of the Ophilus Hall. The explosion instantly lit up the night sky outside the Ophilus Hall. Ed also saw the explosion while watching the Elt family carriage. Janica, who saw it, then asked what he was doing here. She was worried that if he moved too much, his wound would open. Hearing her worried tone, Ed then said that he was fine. Most of this was not his blood. Even so, Janica was confused why he going so far. Hearing that, Ed then pondered for a while. While looking at the carriage, he couldn't help but think, how plain. You might be confused why he said that, even though the exterior was so luxurious, but compared to the people riding in it, the carriage could only be called plain. Golden King Elt. Normally, there should be more than dozens of carriages in a procession, but their arrival in this way meant that they acted quickly and quietly. Elt was Lortel's adoptive father and a fake boss who would later be betrayed by Lortel. Now shouldn't be the time for this important figure to be at the academy. He also didn't understand what they were planning. The carriage seemed to have stopped a long time ago, but why did they just get off now? But he was then surprised when he saw someone among the line of people, the third floor boss's twin maid, Sheenie, the person in charge of tableware. Sheenie was one of the orphans raised by the head maid Alice. Alice had been completely bought by Lortel, and Sheenie was supposed to be the third-floor boss, but now the situation was obviously strange. Sheenie couldn't possibly betray Alice, while Alice has been bought by Lortel. But, what if Alice betrayed Lortel and sided with Elt? There is only one ending that we can predict, which is the death of Lortel. The person who will fight Fenia in the political battle in Act 3, and the one who became the protagonist's greatest ally in the battle against the Roth-Taylor family in Act 4. He is now already very difficult just to fill the role of middle boss Toad. If he was told to replace the role of Lortel, he would definitely immediately reject that crazy idea. Ed then suddenly called Janica. Hearing that, Janica then responded. Ed said he wanted to ask for her help. This was urgent, and he couldn't handle it alone, but he was still confused about how he would explain this situation to Janica. And while Ed was dizzy thinking about what excuse he would make to explain this situation to her, Janica suddenly agreed without asking why. She then asked what she needed to do. Elt at that moment received a letter telling him about Lortel, his adopted daughter who seemed to be following his orders, but in reality, she was planning to betray him and take over the Elt merchantry. Lortel was aware that he was the one who had killed her biological parents, and she persuaded the merchants and executives of the Elt merchantry to overthrow him. Moreover, the negotiation for the purchase of the Sage's Scroll was a bait to lure him to the Sylvania Academy, and make him respond late to the anomalies that occurred at the Elt merchantry headquarters. The author of the letter wrote that she had known all these facts for some reason, and she had secretly obtained a letter that could prove Lortel's conspiracy, but as usual, in this world there is no such thing as a free lunch, because she had been promised a large amount of gold by Lortel. If he did not give more gold, then she might side with Lortel. She lost her eyesight, and she almost lost her hearing due to an accident. This year might be her last year as the head maid. Depending on his decision, the situation could get more complicated or better. The contents listed on the paper attached below the letter were the names of the institutions that she secretly managed regularly. The amount of gold sent to these institutions would determine her next course of action. Alice hoped he could make a decision mercifully and wisely. The letter was the reason why Elt rushed to the academy so quickly. While pointing her sword at Lortel's neck, Alice then told her not to move. In a moment, Lord Elt would arrive at the Ophelis Hall. Alice did not expect he to have such eyes. She thought she was more cold-hearted. Lortel once told her that she would take revenge against Golden King Elt, but she apologized. In her eyes, the two of them didn't look much different. She also felt that she was just like them, and in the midst of the tense situation, suddenly there was an explosion at the entrance of the corridor. While carrying the bound Wilrain, Alvira then said that there was no way someone like Wilrain could access protection magic. And as she suspected, the real mastermind behind this incident was the head maid Alice. She then told Taylor to be careful because she saw Alice had taken someone hostage. Taking advantage of the commotion, Lortel then moved quickly to break free from Alice's distracted grasp. Alice could only be surprised to see that, when Lortel came towards them, they then worriedly asked if she was okay. In such a situation Lortel thought she should say that she was okay, and accused Alice of being the mastermind who arranged the whole situation, also invited them to defeat her as soon as possible. She should blame everything on Alice, but somehow, seeing her silence, Alvira then worriedly called her, and asked why her face looked like that. Hearing that, Lortel was confused about what was wrong with her expression, and Lortel then suddenly ran away from there just like that. They were then shocked and confused at that, then shouted to call her. In the middle of her escape, Lortel thought the Golden King Elt would come, because he couldn't trust his own subordinates. He had come here himself. The plan to dethrone the Elt was almost complete. The massive bookkeeping fraud and maximum losses will be blamed on Elt. Fortunately, now that Elt is not at headquarters, all she needs to do is contact the executives at headquarters by sending the carrier pigeon hidden in her room. After that, just find a place to hide. As long as the axis of this plan, is not caught, then everything will be fine. but Lortel suddenly reduced her running speed. She then said to herself that it was enough, and don't be disappointed. There is no one who understands her in this world. Regarding betrayal, she was also prepared for it. It was something she had experienced too many times. Lortel then stopped and leaned her body against the wall, while shedding tears. She thought, if now she felt sad, it was not appropriate, that's why. She then told herself to do what she could. It was time to run. She had to arrive at her room before everything would be fine after she managed to send the carrier pigeon. In the middle of Lortel's escape, at the same time, on the first floor of the Awfulest Hall, and his subordinates were seen already there. He then felt surprised and confused when he saw a student there. He then immediately told him to evacuate, but the student did not just obey. He told him, because of the risk of collapse, for security reasons, they prohibited everyone from entering the building. Until the faculty and staff arrived, no one was allowed to enter. The student was of course Ed. Hearing his words, then asked if he received special instructions from the academy. Ed replied no, he acted based on his own decision. In a case like this, Sylvania's enforcement system is quite clear. After saying this, Ed then thought for a moment. There are three people to pay attention to in this scenario. First, Lortel, who wants to dethrone and take revenge for her childhood, by leaving the guild master position vacant. Second, who will thwart Lortel's plan, and try hard to succeed in the plan to seize the sage's scroll. And the last, who is caught between the two, namely Alice. The main reason for the plot twist of this story, although the reason for her betrayal was not yet clear, but he knew she was with Lortel on the 5th floor. Then, should he go to the 5th floor to stop her? But he then immediately rejected the idea. He knew that even if he did not intervene, she would encounter Taylor and his group as laid out in the scenario, so he would only leave it to Taylor and his group. They were trustworthy. He then recalled the incident when he confronted Taylor and his group. He had confirmed their ability, hence, his responsibility lies here. Whatever plans to do in the Awfulest Hall, just preventing him from entering will guarantee that the events inside the Awfulest Hall will go in the right direction. After sighing for a moment, Ed then bowed and asked, is he the President Ketchum of the Merchantry? If someone with a position as high as him is visiting here, he is sure there must be a reason. He then suggested, maybe he can talk to the academy first. Isn't it appropriate for him to get the treatment befitting his status? Hearing that, said that he understood. With a threatening look directed at Ed, he then said, so you are on Lortel's side. 10 minutes ago, when Awfulest was in chaos, Ed and Janica went to someone's room in Awfulest Hall, and they punched a hole in the wall of the room just to get in. While looking at the occupant of the room, Ed then asked, you know the situation outside is chaotic, so why don't you come out of your room? The occupant of the room turned out to be Zix, who was still practicing. He also looked surprised when he saw them breaking into his room just like that. After hearing Ed's question, he then replied that he did not want to act rashly. Also does not mean we will die just because a building collapsed. Hearing his answer, Ed admired his calmness. He asked how calm a strong person was. Zix then continued, but if they destroyed the wall, what about him? Wouldn't he be cold if he slept? When looking at his stature and nature, surely no one thought that he was a mage. He then looked at Janica, who was beside Ed, while scratching the back of his head. Zix said this was the first time he greeted her properly. Their interaction was not good during the Glaskin incident. Hearing that, Janica then apologized for that. Seeing Janica, who looked sad, Ed then told her not to be so sad. After all, her punishment was over. Janica's feelings became better after getting comfort from him. She then thanked him for that. After seeing the interaction between the two of them, Zix then asked, were they in a relationship? Janica then blushed at that. She then frantically replied no, that's not it. But she then fell silent for a moment after glancing at Ed, who was putting on a poker face. She then anxiously asked if he was upset to hear that. Ed replied no, it was just Zix's question that was impolite. Janica then felt relieved after hearing that. Zix then bowed and apologized for asking such a thing, but he was confused about why they came all the way here, even to the point of destroying the walls of his room. Hearing that, Ed then said that if he wanted to ask him for a favor, he would return the favor later, back to the present, after giving Ed such intimidating words. Elt then asked him if he was lured by Lortel's beautiful appearance. He also suggested, instead of staying loyal to her for gold that was uncertain, he told him to just take the certain advantage that was right in front of him. Lortel was born having fox blood and had a cunning nature. If she saw someone's back, she would immediately stab it. He who had raised her since she was a child, knew this more than anyone else. He would give him double the gold that Lortel promised right now, so he told him to get out of the way. Hearing his offer, Ed just said thanks, but since he was not promised to be given a penny of gold, then why would he double it? Hearing that, Elt understood. He just felt that Ed could not digest this situation well. Seeing the situation that turned tense, his subordinates immediately understood and prepared to attack. Ed also realized that. Elt then told his subordinates to get rid of him quietly. Ed then immediately ran away in the midst of the pursuit of Elt's subordinates. But his escape route was then immediately blocked by two people. But a strong wind magic suddenly fell on the two of them who blocked Ed's way. The wind magic turned out to come from Zix, who had been there for some time. He then asked if he was okay. Seeing his arrival, Ed then said he would check the situation, so he told them to distract Elt's subordinates during that time. He would return the favor later. They understood. Zix also said that he was the one who owed him a favor first, and they then prepared their attack. Seeing that, Elt realized that they were not students who could be underestimated, so he then told his subordinates to exert all their strength. Right after Elt said that, his subordinates then together rushed towards them, while Ed himself was now still rushing away from there. His goal now was to find Lortel, to convey this situation, but he was then surprised to see that Lortel was behind him. Ed then asked if she couldn't get out. Lortel was confused about how to explain it, but Ed didn't really care about that. He then invited her to go out through the back door first. He also asked if she still had the energy to run. He told her not to miss and follow him closely. The sense of excitement and trust was always there for a reason. The reason Shero, the receptionist of the Elt merchantry, liked Lortel was because he hoped that Lortel would accidentally leak important information and make money from it. The reason Cadden, the merchantry employee, became especially cheerful in the presence of Lortel was because Lortel often gave him extra money. The reason Teeny, the Academy's pet bird, liked to stick to Lortel was because the seeds Lortel gave it were of the best quality. Every pleasure was accompanied by a reason. At least, that was how it was in Lortel's world. While on their escape, Ed realized that there was no time to explain in detail, but he was sure it must be Alice who had betrayed her. Hearing that, Lortel suddenly blamed herself. She blamed herself for the stupid and silly mistakes she had made. She was not like Janica, who grew up being liked and loved by those around her, and thought to face the world solely with joy and love. The day she made the offer to Ed, she saw it. The intense look in Janica's eyes as she looked at Ed, saw a girl who did not want anything in return, who did not need gifts or greed. He also wondered if she could also have such a relationship, and finally she leaked all her plans to Alice. She lived a life by never trusting someone completely, but unknowingly she had violated that principle. If she knew it would happen, she should not have lost sight of her own gloomy, grimy self. He should not have the delusion of being a person who has a romantic life. This time, for the incident of controlling the Awfulous Hall, she had bribed 5 people, among others, the head maid Alice, the twin maids Sheeny and Kelly, Will Rain the representative of the lower-ranked students, and Ed the fallen noble. Alice, Sheeny and Kelly are now siding with Elt. Walrain, who she thought would follow Elt, although he didn't, but he also didn't become an ally. The only one left is this person. Lortel then suddenly apologized to him. She also wondered why she said this, to an ally anyway. She then said that at this time, she couldn't guarantee the 20 gold coins she had promised. As he could see, the situation was unstable. Lortel herself was confused why she would say such stupid nonsense, but she was then shocked when she heard Ed say that he didn't ask that. While holding her hand, he then said that they didn't have much time. why she just stood there, what she was doing. If she was captured by Elt now, then her life was over, planning for the future or do anything else. What she should be thinking about now was how to escape. Ed then ran back while holding Lortel's hand. Lortel could only be stunned with a feeling of disbelief in her heart. She originally believed that joy and trust always appear because there is a reason. If we can't see the reason, then we shouldn't trust. She always believed that. Ed then told her to explain the situation. Hearing that, Lortel then explained, there was a plan to manipulate the market designed by the headquarters. It was probably her father's doing. After the large-scale conquest of monsters in the eastern mountains last summer, the price of armor plummeted. If the Elt merchantry buys up all the armor to a large extent and monopolizes it, and conducts transactions internally with their own people, then the price will be determined by them. Hearing that, Ed then concluded. In short, the plan was to manipulate the market, so he told Lortel not to explain it further. Lortel was surprised to hear that. She confirmed that, as for the plan, her father was in a situation that required funds urgently. Her father found someone who was willing to buy the sage's scroll at a high price, so he made her go to Sylvania to find a way to steal the sage's scroll. Ed immediately understood the situation. So he then told Lortel not to explain it further. Price fixing was a classic scheme where three merchants, A, B, and C, monopolized cheap goods in the market and traded with each other to raise the price intentionally, and due to the lack of supply in the market which made others unable to buy, the price would continue to rise. In such a situation, people think, it's time to buy, and at that time, they would sell the goods they had stockpiled and make a tremendous profit. But, such a scheme relied heavily on trust. If Merchant B and Merchant C sold their goods in the market without the knowledge of Merchant A, then the price would plummet in an instant. Because Merchant A had gone to the trouble of monopolizing the goods, establishing cooperation, and stockpiling the goods as well, Elta's Merchant A in the parable would face huge losses alone and was on the verge of losing his position. For this scheme, Lortel had bribed many other merchants from Merchant B and Merchant C for years, but only when Elt had left the headquarters of the Elt merchantry would the 6 merchants she had bribed get the right to approve the sale. Based on the story, Ed concluded, she raised the scale of the Ophilus Hall control incident to corner the Academy's finances. It would increase the chance of success in the negotiation for the purchase of the Sage's Scroll. The main thing is, she planned to lure Elt, who needed urgent funds to get him out of the headquarters, then immediately sell the armors. Lortel was shocked to hear that. She didn't expect Ed to conclude that far. Ed continued, then, there is only one thing she has to do, which is to send a message to the Elt merchantry headquarters, and tell them to sell the armors right now. Hearing that, Lortel said that she had a carrier pigeon in her room. It was a device that could directly connect to her forces at the headquarters. Hearing that, Ed then told her to send the message using the carrier pigeon and stay hidden until the sales plan at the headquarters was executed. That way she would win. But Lortel hesitated. She suspected that maybe her father had anticipated this a little. He planned to arrest her tonight and force her to confess all her plans and expose the company traitors. Ed was silent for a moment after hearing that. He then told Lortel to listen carefully. Now, hide in a safe place without being seen as much as possible. If he were an Elt, he would definitely send some people to wait at the 2 bridges that became the road to the Arkan Mountains. She will definitely be followed if she passes there. Tell the horsemen at the headquarters to just drive an empty horse carriage out of the Arkan Mountains, then leave the carriage in a proper place and tell the horsemen to run away. They will mistakenly think she has left the Arkan Mountains. Lortel understands. In the North Forest, there is a cabin he built. So he told her to just wait there for 3 days. For her carrier pigeon, he will go to her room and bring it. Just write a message like selling right now and send it. Other complicated matters will be handled by the headquarters. Hearing that, Lortel carelessly just said he was right. Ed also realized the strangeness of Lortel's attitude. He then grasped both shoulders of Lortel firmly and said, there is someone guarding the back door. He will go out and handle it, then go to her room. He told her to wait there for a while until the person gone, then run to the headquarters. The two of them are like fellow merchants who have been allied for a long time. Their movements and ways of handling problems are very efficient, even to the point of making people believe that they can entrust everything to them. Seeing her silence, Ed then asked if she really in her senses. She was not usually unfocused like this. Hearing that, Lortel then said that she understood. She thought this time it might really work. With a feelings of hope, she then asked why he was willing to go so far to help her. Ed was stunned for a moment to hear that. He then felt annoyed that she suddenly asked something like that. Ed then replied that he just felt he had to help, and then he left there. The room suddenly became quiet with the sound of pattering rain that could be heard from outside, and Lortel then could only let her body fall, with a blush on her face. She then breathed quickly. This passionate sound, was it the sound of the final battle between Alice and Taylor's group? But she immediately denied the conjecture, because the sound was closer. Then was it the battle on the first floor? But she also felt no, this was closer than that. This was an unbelievable fact, but this was the sound of her heartbeat. After leaving Lortel and rushing to her room, Ed was then confronted by someone. That person also didn't expect that Ed was the one who came out from there. That person was the maid who was in charge of the tableware, Maid Sheeny. Seeing her who blatantly wouldn't let him pass, Ed just said, for the last challenge, isn't this too bland? He could almost heave a sigh of relief now, because now this grueling Awfulous Hall occupation incident was finally almost over.